In this next section, we're talking about a different feature of our three-dimensional objects. Instead of looking at the outside faces and what contains the three-dimensional object, we want to know what kind of cross-sections we can get. A cross-section means that I'm going to take something, and if I was to slice that object, what shape would I end up with? The first one here, what we have is we either get a circle or a rectangle. So if I slice it parallel to my base, it's always going to be whatever shape the base is. So if I take a slice out of the cylinder, I'm going to get a shape that looks like a circle. Our other object is to slice it in this direction, from top to bottom, and that time we're going to end up with a rectangle. On the next shape, we're going to have a rectangle no matter how we slice it. So I can slice it parallel to my base, and I get that rectangle. Or I can slice it perpendicular to my base, and I still get a rectangular shape. Either way, we are going to get a rectangle if you are cutting a rectangular prism. The next one we have is a cone. If I cut it parallel to the base, remember, anytime we cut parallel to the base, it's going to end up being the shape of the base. We just get smaller circles. So we're going to have a small circle at a large circle at the base, and then you would just have a smaller circle if you got closer to that apex. Then the other direction that I can slice it is perpendicular. If I cut it perpendicular to my base like this, we're going to end up with a triangle. It's kind of like looking at that triangle from the side. If it's a pyramid, again, the base parallel to the base is just going to give us a cross section that is the same shape as the base. And as we move up to the apex, it's just going to become a smaller rectangle. And then I can also do it perpendicular to the base, and it's going to create this triangle shape. So that cross section would give me a triangle. Then if I have a sphere, no matter how you cut the sphere, it's just either going to give you big circles or little circles, and we can cut it vertically. We could also cut this one horizontally. We're still going to get a circle. Now this here is going to be somewhat of a new concept to you. We're going to start with a two-dimensional object, and we're going to rotate that object either about the x-axis or the y-axis, and then we need to figure out what kind of shape is created. Are we going to end up with a cone or a cylinder? So I'm going to take this triangle. I have started with a triangle. Before we start, we're going to look at the dimensions of this triangle. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to draw this triangle off to the side. I've got 5 on that bottom, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on that side. So we're going to use these numbers to identify our dimensions in a second. First one is asking us to rotate about the x-axis. And when you rotate, we're basically just going to reflect that object. So I'm going to take this one, that top point is all the way up at 9. So I'm going to move it down here to -9. That becomes that new point. And then we're going to draw in our triangle. So I'm going to draw this triangle in here. And what we notice is that we have created a cone, and there's my circle base. What we need to figure out is what is going to be our dimensions. There's two dimensions we need to identify when we're talking about a cone. One, we want to know what the radius is equal to, and two, we want to know what the height is equal to. The radius only comes from a circle, so we're looking at this circle base that we just drew in, and on that circle base, the radius, half of that side that we just counted, is going to be equal to 9. The height is going to be the other dimension of that triangle that we determined to be 5. So that one has a radius of 9 and a height of 5. Now the second section is asking us to rotate about the y-axis. And we're still going to do a reflection the same way. We can see that this point is out here at -5. So I'm going to move it to a +5. I'm going to draw in my triangle. This time, my circle base happens down here at the bottom. So we're going to go back to what is the radius and what is the height. Our circle's at the bottom here, and half of that circle we determined to be 5. And that means that the height is going to be the other side of that triangle, which we counted to be 9. So you end up with two different cones. Both times, no matter which rotation we did, we got a cone. So a triangle rotated about the axis will give us a cone. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this time with a rectangle. Again, let's count off our dimensions first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have this rectangle. I know this side is 8, and then 1, 2, 3. The short side is 3. Now the first one has asked us to rotate about the x-axis. Rotating about the x-axis, we are going to reflect this object. So this object is up at +3. I'm going to move my corners down here to -3. Your circle is going to be that point that you just reflected. We're going to draw a circle through the points that we reflected here. And since it's a cylinder, we're going to have a circle on both sides. Just like the cone, the two dimensions we want is going to be a radius and a height. You can see where we drew our circle here at the two ends. That half of that circle we counted off to be 3 units. Then connecting the two bases will be the height of your cylinder. That makes the other unit of our rectangle an 8. Second one is asking us to rotate about the y-axis this time. Now I'm going to take this same point. It's over here at 8, so I'm going to move it over here to -8. Whoa. Went too high. And again, the circle is going to be through the 2 points that we reflected. So we reflected that point over to the left, so that's which way my circle base needs to be drawn in. Now we have a bigger base than on the first time. The radius is going to be the long side of the rectangle this time. So half of that circle that we just drew in, we've already determined that to be 8 units. And then the height is going to be the short side. Connecting those two circles, the height here is going to be 3. Now we saw that if I take a rectangle and rotate it, it's always going to give me a cylinder.